Norway Chess 2014, being played from June 3rd through June 13th, 2014, with a great players, many of the top 10 in the world. It's going to be a great tournament. Here are the standings after 8 rounds in Norway Chess 2014. Sergei Caruana comes out ahead with 5 points. He won today. He won last year as well. Carlsen is right behind him, and so is Caruana at 4.5. And Topalov, Kramnik, and Grishik at 4. Aronian, Fiddler, Giri, and Augustine with 3.5. Obviously, Magnus has a good shot at winning this. Caruana is really in the driver's seat, but what does he do? Does Caruana play for a draw, or does he go all out? We'll see tomorrow in round 9. Hi folks, John Cordisco here. Another game from round 8 of Norway Chess 2014 between 11 Aronian from Armenia, one of the top 5 players in the world, and Fabiano Caruana, Italian-American representing Italy as black, another one of the top 5 players in the world. It's going to be another English, but this one's going to be a symmetrical English, unlike the previous game where it was English versus King's Indian. Let's go through it. The opening, I always kind of breeze through the opening. Okay, D5. This is an interesting position. I flirted with the English opening a little bit in the past. I got to stop playing E4. It seems my games are better if I don't play E4 as white. Maybe knight F3, but C4 and D4 I think are going to be my main opening moves for white in the upcoming tournaments I'm going to be in. I do want to mention, it looks like chances are good I'm going to be playing in the $1 Million Chess Tournament in Las Vegas this October. So that's going to be pretty awesome. I live in upstate New York, so it'll be a nice flight. But I'll tell you, I'm in the under 1600 section. And the top prize in the under 1600 section is $40,000 US for those of you outside the United States, and they pay up to 50 places per section. Anybody that's interested, this could be the biggest prize money tournament ever. Anyway, folks, enough about that. If you had gone knight to G5 instead, C takes, E takes, Bishop B4. I'll be honest with you, I kind of like that a little better. E takes, D takes, B takes, E4, and Queen C7. That's very interesting. If he had taken the pawn instead on move 8 after Bishop takes, Queen C7, F4. About an even game, minute advantage for black, even though he's up a pawn. White's got a heck of a center there, and that Bishop. That would be an interesting game. After Queen E7, G takes, G6. Bishop D7 is pretty much a standard move. Then after Rook to G1, Knight H5, F4, Knight takes, Rook takes G7. This, you can tell that's going to be a wild game. After G6, Aronian goes Bishop E3, just developing. D6, Queen D2. It's like White's ready to castle on the queen side. Bishop E6. We're not sure what side Black's going to castle on. I assume the king side. Long castle for White, Knight D7. Now comes F4. Now you can start moving those. I don't think those double F pawns are really that bad for Aronian. Especially now he's castled on the queen side. He's going to be able to storm the king side with his pawns. Black castled long, though. Surprised me. Let's go back here. The computer actually calls for castling long in that spot. The number 2 move is now it's number 1. Rook to G1, F5. Go right after White's center. Immediately E takes and G takes. Now, unlike me, because I'm a weak player, I'm an average player. These guys are world-class players. I don't like isolated pawns. But these guys just go through it as a matter of course. I guess they know what they're doing. Queen E2. rook to g8, rook takes, bishop takes, queen to d3. Now that was a weird way to trade rooks. But I'm looking here, and white's got a pretty good advantage. Pretty good. Looks like Caruana's back on his heels. He's over a point down in score. And I'll tell you, that d6 pawn looks incredibly weak for black. Knight to b6, putting the knight in a better spot and putting the rook on the d pawn. Queen takes check, king to b7. Now I gotta tell you, for real, this is a lot easier to play for white as it is black. And white just simple move, b3, protect the c4 pawn, d5. If you got a weak pawn like that, just push it. Aronian decides to go queen to d3, which of course we can see why, because now if black takes the rook for free. Queen to g7, putting pressure. It kind of freezes this knight because the queen's putting pressure on this diagonal. C takes. Now this is why I'm not a very good player. I would have played pawn takes in a second for black. But the two choices in the computer are knight takes, king to c7, believe it or not, just leaving it, or bishop takes. I guess that's why I'm still a mediocre player. Knight takes, queen a6 check, king comes back, queen to a5. Interesting to be sure. I mean, what do you do here? I mean, your knight's in pre on c3, but black's rook and d8's in pre. I mean, this is crazy. Bishop b7, of course, you protect your rook. Bishop c4. Finally, the knight takes the bishop. And pawn takes e3. If instead, rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, king b7, pawn takes, queen takes check, king d1. This is a long scenario, but bishop takes, queen e7 check, a6, pawn takes, queen takes c4. And believe it or not, in that scenario, the material's dead even. After pawn takes, rook takes check, knight takes instead of the king. If the king had taken instead, then bishop takes, pawn takes, queen to g6. Not as good for white, I don't think. After knight takes, bishop d5. If bishop had taken c4 for black, after pawn takes, king b7, queen a3. And that's a pretty good advantage for white. Not only is he a pawn up, but he's going to have a hard time here. After bishop to d5, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight to c3, go after the pawn immediately. Queen to g1 check, king to b2. The king had gone to d2 instead. Queen takes check, knight e2. Pretty much comes out the same. After king to b2, queen to f2 check, king to a3, hide that king. Now that discovery with the pawn isn't that big of a deal, so queen to d2, pinning the knight, f5. I saw them going over the game after, and I think Aronian or maybe even Caruana thought that king to a4 was interesting. And after king to b7, queen checks, king, queen e8, threatening the bishop. Bishop moves. And we can kind of see this coming now. Check, king c6, queen e8, c7, f7, and so on, and so on. And they agreed on a draw. And I got to tell you the truth, they're on move 38. We haven't reached the time control yet, but according to the computer, it is 0.00. So, fair shake to both sides. That wasn't a grandmaster draw by any means. Anyway, folks, there's the other game from round 8. in Norway Chess 2014. I hope you enjoyed it. I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
And now we're back in the living room. And now, bedroom. And